Marxist theory. The Marxist theory is originated in the mid-19th century, and its development and systematization became possible in the 1920s after the October Revolution of 1917.
What is Marxist theory? It is a theory developed by Karl Marx, and it's a social, political, and economical theory which focuses on the struggle between the capitalists and the working class. It states that the capitalist societies have two classes of people, which is the middle class and the public. He believed that this conflict would ultimately lead to a revolution in which the working class would overthrow the capitalist class and seize the control of the economy. In addition, it recognizes a tension between the demands of capitalist accumulation and the requirements of the social reproduction.
Good day everyone, I am Cherilyn Janisha and I'm going to tackle about the Marxist ethics as natural law. In 1999, Pope John Paul II visited Cuba. He condemned capitalism for its financial oppression of developing countries. For example, the way he supported the campaign of breaking the chain of debt and communist oppression of civil liberties. For example of it is the Tiananmen Square. Natural law is a way forward upholding intrinsic values or liberties. Marx follows the Greek holistic view of justice, which presents the totality of society, its social institutions, and integrative functions of laws, customs, and traditions. To read the work from Marxist perspective, one must understand that Marxism asserts the literature is a reflection of culture, and that culture can be influenced by literature. Marxists believe literature can instigate revolution. There are four historic periods according to Marx theory. The first one is the feudalism, also known as the social system. Capitalism, as the production of profit. Socialism, as the social ownership. And the last one is the communism, which is the society's ultimate goal, the workers' paradise. There are three works of Karl Marx. The first one is the German ideology. It was done in 1845. Karl Marx declares that consciousness does not determine life. Life determines consciousness, which is, I agree, humans define themselves. Marxist also said that our ideas and concepts about ourselves fashioned in everyday discourse in the language of the real life. The Communist Manifesto. Proletariat. Proletariat is one of the lowest economic and social classes in a society. In ancient Rome, the proletariat consisted of the poor landless freemen. It included artisans and small tradesmen who had been gradually impoverished by the extension of slavery. The proletariat, literal meaning producers of offspring, was the lowest rank among Roman citizens. Bourgeoisie, the social order that is dominated by the so-called middle class. In social and political theory, the notion of the bourgeoisie was largely a construct of Karl Marx and those who were influenced by him. Das Kapital. History became basis of the 20th century Marxism, socialism, and communism. History, an understanding of people and their actions and beliefs, is determined by economic conditions. Marx maintains that intricate web of social relationships emerges when any group of people engage in the production of goods. The ideology of a society, such as the belief, values, and culture, is determined by the upper class, whereas the rich became richer, while the poor became poorer. Here is a picture that perfectly encapsulates the capitalist structure. Truly speaking, you find it difficult to comprehend the base of the economic system that they live in because it is often seems so looming and ubiquitous. At the most basic level, capitalism is only really comprised of two social classes, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. However, there are typical different tiers of power and levels of equality, even within the bourgeoisie. hence the pyramid shape. It is self-explanatory which each tier of the bourgeoisie is responsible for, consuming and governing on behalf of the proletariat and attacking and deceiving the proletariat to keep them complacent in their economic role of upholding the entirety of society on their shoulders. There are two important things to take away from this picture. First, capital, whether it's in the form of private property or a bag of money, is more valuable than human life. Even the ruling class, the most powerful of the bourgeoisie, are a level below capital in the pyramid. Human lives are expendable, but capital is not. Second, the capitalist is unsustainable. Capitalism's only function of creating seemingly endless amounts of capital is what leads to its downfall. The already struggling proletariat will be unable and unwilling to feed, clothe, and labor on behalf of an economy that constantly threatens to crush their very existence. When the time comes, revolution will ensue. It is crucial for the proletariat to re-examine our world through the lens of social class, because they will quickly realize that they are the only one able to completely overhaul the existing structure and reconstruct a system that actually functions to create equality.
Here we're going to tackle about different famous thinker of Marxist theory. First one is Vladimir Ulyanov, or also known as Lenin. Lenin was a Russian revolutionary politician and a politic theorist. He is a Marxist. He developed a variant of this communist ideology known as Leninism. Next is Louis Althusser. He was a French Marxist philosopher. His arguments and theses were set against the threats that he saw attacking the theoretical foundation of Marxism. Next is Nikolai Ivanovich Bukharin. He was a Bolshevik revolutionary, a Soviet politician, Marxist philosopher, and a prolific author on revolutionary theory. Next is Anthony Pannekoek. He was a Dutch astronomer, a philosopher, a Marxist theorist, and a socialist revolutionary. He was one of the main theorists of Council Communism. Next is Walter Benedict's Benjamin. He was a German Jewish philosopher, cultural critic, and essayist, an eclectic thinker combining elements of German idealism, Romanticism, Western Marxism, and Jewish mysticism. Benjamin made enduring and influential contribution to aesthetic theory, literary criticism, and historical materialism. Next is Joseph Stalin. He was a Gregorian revolutionary and the ruler of the Soviet Union from 1927 from 1953. A communist ideologically committed to a Leninist interpretation of Marxism. Stalin formalized these ideas as Marxism and Leninism, while his own policies are known as Stalinism. Next is Lev Davidovich Bronstein, or also known as Leon Trotsky. He was a Russian Marxist revolutionary, political theorist, and a politician. Ideologically a communist, he developed a variant of Marxism which has become known as Trotskyism. Next famous thinker of Marxist theory is Guy Ernest Debord. He was a French Marxist theorist philosopher, filmmaker, member of Latrice International, founder of Latrice Faction, and founding member of Situationist International. Next is George Lucas. He was a Hungarian Marxist philosopher. He was a founder of Western Marxism, an interpretive tradition that departs from the Marxist ideological orthodox of the Soviet Union. Next is Rosa Luxemburg. She was a Polish-German Marxist, a philosopher, economist, anti-war activist, and a revolutionary socialist. Next is Ernst Bloch. He was a German Marxist philosopher. He was influenced by Hegel and Karl Marx. Next is Clara Zetkin. She was a German Marxist theorist, communist activist, and advocate for women's rights. Next is Manabendra Nath Roy. or also known as Nat Roy. Roy was an Indian revolutionary, a radical activist, and a political theorist, as well as a noted philosopher in 20th centuries. Next is Karl Korsch. He was a German Marxist theoretician and a political philosopher. Korsch is considered to be one of the major figures responsible for laying the groundwork of Western Marxism in 1920s. Next is Cyril Lionel Robert James. He is a journalist and a Marxist. His work are influential in various theoretical, social, and historiographical contexts. His works is staple of Marxism, and he figures as a pioneering and influential voice in post-colonial literature. Next is Jean-Paul Sartre. He was a French philosopher, playwright, novelist, screenwriter, political activist, biographer, and literary critic. He is one of the key figures in the philosophy of existentialism and phenomenology, and one of the leading figures in 20th century French philosophy and Marxism. Next is Amadeo Bordiga. He was an Italian Marxist and a contributor to communist theory, the founder of Communist Party of Italy. Next is Paul Lafargue. He was a French revolutionary Marxist socialist, a political writer, journalist, literary critic, and activist. He was Karl Marx's son-in-law, having married his daughter Laura. His best-known work is The Right to be Lazy. Next is Daniel De Leon. He was an American socialist newspaper editor, a politician, Marxist theoretician, and he is an organizer and trade union. Next is Mao Zedong, or also known as Chairman Mao, was a Chinese communist revolutionary who was the founding father of the People's Republic of China, which he ruled as the chairman of the Chinese Communist Party from the establishment in 1949 until his death in 1976. Ideologically, a Marxist-Leninist, his theories, military strategies, and political policies are collectively known as Maoism. Last one is Pinarayi Vijayan. He is an Indian politician who is the current Chief Minister of Kerala, serving since May 25, 2016. A member of Politburo of the Communist Party of India, Marxist, he is the longest serving Secretary of Kerala State Committee of the CPMIM since 1998 to 2015. So that's all. The famous thinkers of Marxist theory.
The main points of criticism against Marxist theory are general criticism, historical materialism, historical determinism, suppression of individual rights, also issues about economic, particularly in labor theory of value, distorted or absent price signals, reduced incentives, inconsistency, and relevance. Next is the sixth criticism, the social, and lastly, issues concerning epistemological. Democratic socialists and social democrats reject the idea that socialism can be accomplished only through class conflict and a proletarian revolution. Some contemporary supporters of Marxism argue that many aspects of Marxist thought are viable, but that the corpus is incomplete or somewhat outdated in regards to certain aspects of economic, political, or social theory. The critics describe it as an approach which cannot realistically explain the realities of politics and international politics. To sum it all up, the foremost point of criticism against Marx is that it is a partial concept. He has minimized the significance of other non-economic factors in the history such as ethical, ideological, religious, cultural, and the political conditions.
Benefits of Marxist theory. Number 1. It valued equality and human rights greatly. Karl Marx believed that everyone should have equal access to factors required for human survival and education, no matter what he or she works with and no matter where he or she is from. Number 2. It is a one way to fix the issues of capitalism. Marx believed that companies should be state-controlled, which could help eliminate monopolization that could lead to a lack of competition. Number 3. analyzes power and conflict in society. It explains why there is an even distribution of power and wealth between social classes. And number 4, provide one prism through which to view the societies around you. It recognizes that there is an imbalance in power and explains in great detail why that is. It will generally seek to support the downtrodden and empower the powerless.
Good day everyone, I'm Eden K. Almaroya and I'm talking about the application of Marxist ethics in environmental ethics. Marxist ethics in the purpose of environmental ethics is that they maintain to provide moral grounds for social policies aimed at protecting the Earth's environment and setting environmental humiliation or shame right. So, we should build ecological or environmental ethics as an independent discipline. Firstly, it is a discipline with ecological or environmental morality as the research object. Ecological morality is the behavior norm and evaluation system of communication between humankind and nature. Marxist ethics should pay full attention to and strengthen the study of ecological morality. Secondly, it is an interdisciplinary science between ecology and ethics and has an independent subject position. And thirdly, it takes the dialectics materialism about the relationship between humankind and nature as the theoretical foundation. According according to Marx and Engels, the history of nature and the history of man are inseparable and are dependent on each other. Fourthly, it should study the essence and construction law of ecological or environmental morality. You should constantly construct and perfect the communist ecological morality. And finally, it is of great significance to the development of socialist material civilization and spiritual civilization and is helpful to the development of ecology and environment. So, there is a widespread assumption among environmentalists that Marxism, as a productivist ideology, has little to say and little concern for the fate of the environment. Contrary to a common perception, much of it understandably based on the diabolical environmental depredations carried out in the name of socialism by the former Soviet Union, Eastern Bloc, and China, Marx and Engels had a much more holistic view of humankind's place in the environment.
In a form of capitalism, Marxist theory is applied to business ethics. It is said that the Marxist theory is viewed as a moral judgment of capitalism, since it reveals how capitalism seeks to reduce or eliminate human responsibility to the point where people are no longer accountable for their actions or attempting harmful doings, such as business ethics, is impossible to achieve because capitalism encourages selfish, overreaching, and immoral company practices, and that business ethics is immaterial since it focuses on the moral or immoral behavior of individual businesses or entrepreneurs that diverts the attention away from capitalism's flaws. Therefore, it is important to apply the Marxist theory in business ethics. And in order to accurately characterize a variety of workplace situations, Marxist theory is used to business ethics.
In this slide is all about the application of Marxist ethics in human sexuality. In this theory applies the Marxist feminism and the family. In this theory, he believes that the woman oppression is a symptom of more fundamental form of oppression. It means that the women are not oppressed by men or by sexism, but the capitalism itself, because the capitalist system traditionally the woman are take care of their children and also responsible for the household chores, so that the capitalism relies on women's unpaid domestic work. So that's all for the application of human sexuality.
Marxist ethics is a doctrine of morality and ethics that is based on or derived from Marxist philosophy. Marxism, Leninism holds that morality, like other forms of ideology, is of a class character and is manifested in people's behavior in different ways, in different historical conditions, in accordance with the interest of what classes or social strata a person occupies.
5 questions to reflect on Marxist theory. The first one is what are the main theoretical problems that Marxists have to resolve today? I will speak of problems that have to be worked on rather than resolved, because the solutions are not purely theoretical but practical as well. If solutions are found, they will be the outcome of the imaginations and experience of millions upon millions of people. The second question is that in the 1990s, it was widely argued that the contradiction between labor and capital was no longer the main conflict in contemporary societies. Do you agree with this idea? There are many ways to look at this question. The third one, what are the points of convergence that you see today between Marxist theory and mass social movements? I believe at its core, the critique of political economy and of capital accumulation, Marxist theory remains the most effective tool for sucking free market globalization in its consequences. The fourth one, how do Marxist theory help today and who benefits it? Lastly, what part of Marxist heritage clearly belong to the past and which one do you feel remain equally relevant today?